So, welcome to Adventures in Producing. My name is Wendy Mitchell. I'm a journalist and festival programmer, and I started this series because I think producers, especially independent producers, are some of the absolute unsung heroes of the film and TV industries. And I wanted to pick their brains about how they do their work. And so far, the series has only been women because why not? Let's lift up the sisterhood. So today, we've got a very, very special guest who is Christine Vachon, who I've been lucky to know for a few years and interview a few times. And she's always very generous with her time and always says, "Ask me anything, Wendy, whatever you want to talk about." So we're very thankful that Christine, I don't know why I said we, it's like I've got a team here. I'm very grateful that Christine is joining us. So, if you're watching this series or listening, you probably know Christine is the founder and co-head of the New York-based production company Killer Films, alongside Pamela Koffler. They've been going strong since 1995, 30th anniversary. The credits are just too many to list. Go Google her, go IMDb it. But just to mention a few, Todd Haynes, all of his films, and probably my personal favorite of his is Carol. So I'm going to name check that one. Most recently, May December. Happiness by Todd Solondz. Kids by Larry Clark. Swoon by Tom Kalin. I love that one. I Shot Andy Warhol by Mary Harron. Boys Don't Cry, Kim Peirce. Hedwig, John Cameron Mitchell, no relation. First Reformed, Paul Schrader. Zola, Janicza Bravo. Past Lives by Celine Song, which is one of my favorite films of the past decade. And she's had out earlier this year Materialists, that's Celine's new film. She's got two new films sort of on the dock that we'll see from directors Kent Jones and Rachel Rose. Variety, no, not Variety, Vanity Fair called her Hollywood's greatest anomaly. Let's see what she has to say about that. But Christine, thank you really for giving us time. You're really generous in talking to the industry a lot and mentoring. And yeah, thank you for that. I always like to ask producers how they get their start. So we need the Vachon origin story. You were an actual New Yorker born and bred.
Correct.
That's amazing.
Actual New Yorker, born and bred, went off to Rhode Island to Brown University for
Hmm.
college, came back. And one of the things I think is sort of interesting, obviously I came back to New York City in the 80s, and there was a lot going on. I mean, there was, a kind of collision of art and music and cinema and but one thing that I think often doesn't get talked about is another critical thing that happened in the 80s was the birth of MTV.
Okay.
And MTV at that time was just a video jukebox. That's all it was. And they needed music videos in
Hmm.
order to feed that machine. Um, so, suddenly there was a lot of opportunity to get into production, which, there wasn't a ton of that in New York at the time. I
Hmm.
mean, um, there were Hollywood films that would come and do a couple of days in New York. And that's how I actually got my start was on some of those, big Hollywood movies that, you know, came to New York for 5 days or something.
Okay.
Um, and I started out as a production assistant and then kind of moved into assistant directing. Um, but I
On the music videos or on some of the
everything,
on everything. Okay.
music videos, movies, what have you. So that was really how I got my start. I mean, I think that, you can come at producing in a lot of different ways. Um, I like the idea I liked the idea of coming through production because it really taught me how that machine works.
Hmm.
But, people come through financing, they come through distribution, they come through development. There's no right way.
Hmm. And can you tell us a favorite music video from that era that you worked on?
God, I don't remember. To be honest, there were so many that were like so nothing. They were
Okay.
basically like the
Nothing
band
iconic.
band standing around lip syncing to their song. I mean, I worked on the movie Parting Glances,
Oh,
which
yeah.
was Steve Buscemi's first film, and in the movie, he's supposed to be a guy who was, like, becoming a rock star, and then he gets AIDS, and in the movie, we did a music video for him that he watched on MTV.
Okay. The sort of film within the film, except it's music
Exactly.
video. Okay, nice one. And you've mentioned why coming through the production path was right for you, but I'm wondering why being a producer has been the right fit for you. You mentioned that you were an AD for a while. Like, did you ever think you might direct more? Did you want to be a screenwriter? Did you want to work in distribution? Why was producing the right path?
Well, something I realize, now, I run an MFA program, or I'm the artistic
Mm,
director of an MFA program at the State University of New York at Stony Brook. And what has become clearer and clearer to me, not just in that institution, but in most institutions that I speak at, whether they're here or abroad, is people almost don't even know that there's other paths in the film business or the content creation business. I mean, one of the things I love to do is bring in guests to speak, at my class, but to bring in guests who are like location managers or assistant directors or casting directors, and really to enforce this idea that there's a lot of different ways to be creative in this field.
mm,
And I guess it's a long-winded way of saying it never occurred to me to be a producer because no one ever told me what one was, you know? Like, it wasn't really till I got on a film set that I started to get a sense of like, "Oh, there's somebody who is kind of keeping not just keeping what we're doing each day in their mind, but they're looking ahead and they're looking backwards and they're looking beyond the movie beyond when the movie is done shooting,
mm,
and that was really interesting to me. There's always been this a little bit of this, assumption that, like, well, if you're producing, it's because, you didn't have it to be a director, but I really just I don't think that's how most of us feel.
no. And that's part of the reason I want to do this series of interviews because, sometimes the producer is the genesis of the project and they hire the director. That's not always, I mean, you work in many different ways with across the projects at Killer, but, I think it's ludicrous to think that the director is the only one who has a vision for a film.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
But directors are important. You know who I'm gonna ask about. When you were at Brown, you met Todd Haynes. And how
correct.
did that creative relationship flourish back then and start to grow? And how have you maintained that for so many years?
Well, we actually didn't really know each other at Brown
Okay.
because he came a year after me. He took a year off, a gap year, I suppose,
Oh,
but,
yes.
you know, that wasn't so common back then. Um, he took a year off, and, we were on campus his together when he was a freshman and I was a sophomore, and then I went away for a junior year abroad, and I came back, and he went away for a junior year abroad, so we we sort of kinda kept missing each other.
You weren't
But
quite besties at Brown.
no, no, I mean, I probably knew him to say hello to, but that was it. Um, we both ended up in New York. He worked, I think, for an art gallery called Paula Cooper. Um, and I was proofreading, to pay the bills. Um, and we had a common friend who was a guy named Barry Ellsworth. And Barry came from money. Um, and he had an idea that he wanted to start a small film company, with, some of his money, uh, and that would actually produce short films. And he knew Todd and I both separately from each other, and he asked us if we would join this venture with him. So we did. And, um, and it was really interesting. It gave us about 2 solid years of extraordinary experience. I think we made 7 or 8 short films altogether. Um, and, uh, uh, and, when it concluded, Todd was that's not completely true. In our first year, Todd was working on his own short film,
Hmm.
which was Superstar: The Karen Carpenter Story.
The infamous, yes.
Exactly. So I helped him finish the film. I'm not a producer on it, although I get mistaken as a producer on it all the time. Um, I get mistakenly credited. Uh, but I helped him finish it, really because I'd had some edit room experience and he hadn't had a lot. And, um, and then when I saw the film, I really did have kind of an epiphany of like, wow, this is so original and so provocative and, um, and subversive, but also really entertaining.
Hmm.
And, um, and I really thought, this is it. These are the kind of movies I wanna make.
Hmm.
So, he was starting to talk about what he wanted to do next.
I was going to say, did he already had Safe in mind, or?
Poison was the next
Oh,
one.
Poison. Sorry.
And he originally wanted to make it like an hour-long film with, like, each section being 20 minutes. And I said, because I was already getting a sense, like, there's a world out there where you can actually, like, make money, and these movies, people will go see them. But so maybe, like, one of my biggest contribution to Poison might well have been my saying to him, "You know what? You should just make it a feature," you know?
Yes, stretch it out a little more.
Exactly. So, and then, we raised the money, which, not was not as crazy as it would be now because there were a lot of grants back in
Mm.
those days, and because of Superstar, there were a lot of funding bodies that wanted to give Todd money.
Okay. And was Poison? Did that go through Killer? Was that one of the early Killer, or did Killer come after that?
Killer was not even a twinkle in my eye.
Okay. Not
The
a
first movie that was officially called a killer film
mm.
was Cindy Sherman's Office Killer.
Oh,
So, I mean, we call the other movies killer films now because they were, informed by our sensibilities, and
mm.
Pam and I started working together. Uh, I guess the first feature we did together when she was a line producer was probably Kids,
Oh yeah.
and then I Shot Andy Warhol, and then Stonewall, and then we were kinda off to the races.
Mhm. And tell me a little bit about why you and Pam. I mean, you've had these amazing creative collaborations for decades, and another big one of those is with Pamela Koffler, who we
Right.
mentioned. Ho Why did you think you might work well together? Because you could have similar taste in films, but not work well together. Or you might work well together, but not want to make the same kind of work. So why was your relationship with Pam a good fit for taking Killer forward and for these 30 years?
You know, I I had a real instinct, I think, after because she line produced those first few movies, and, and I had a real instinct that we were a good fit in some ways because we're not the same, and our taste isn't identical, and, I really do believe, like, working with somebody who isn't like you is good, you know? Um, and, um and I think we both are kind of insanely loyal, you
Mm,
know? I would say the same for Todd,
mm,
it's and we I mean, Pam and I have had disagreements. I don't know that we've had any real out and out fights. I mean, we've
mm,
certainly sniped at each other in the past, but, um, but I don't think we've really, like, hit one of those, like,
mm,
you know, th like, walls of disagreement. Um, but I still get enormous pleasure out of our relationship. We're usually each other's first call in the
mm.
morning. Um, we're really good friends. Um, uh, but we are very different.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people think of you more as the face of Killer. I mean, thankfully, I've started to see more Pam around a bit. Um, but you know, it is an equal partnership, right?
It's very much an equal partnership. I have been the face of Killer because, frankly, it's something I take pleasure from and she
Mm,
doesn't.
yeah.
You
Okay.
know,
Fair enough.
I have tried to push her forward more, and I think she's starting to, slowly, do more of the things that I do.
Yeah.
But, I'll get on a plane and go to Galway for 4 days, you know?
Yeah.
That's not her idea of a good time,
Yeah.
you know? But it's nice to, like, go do the speech and get into the
Mhm.
magazine and, meet a bunch of filmmakers and
And talk
etcetera.
at the festivals. Yeah. Um, with you and Pam, I think it's a really healthy example to how people can run a company together, because I think producing can be a very lonely business if you're sort of a one woman band. And do you think that's been one of the keys to for both of you being sane, is that you have each other for these 30 years?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, you know, uh, even if we're not on the exact same project, we I will call her and just run her through, like, "This is what happened on this movie, and this is what I decided to do," and, I mean, we take very seriously the idea of, like, even if she's working on something, if she's across something and I'm not,
Hmm.
I technically still am,
Yeah.
and vice versa.
Your name is
So
on that, but one of you might be
exactly.
leading. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a constant sort of give and take of, like, how do I need some perspective,
Yeah.
I had this conversation with this agent. I was trying to figure out this, all of those things.
And do you think this might be like a self diagnosis that you need a therapist for? Do you think you produce in a different way than some other producers do it?
Um, I would say, and I've worked with enough other producers to know there's certainly different flavors.
Mm.
Like, when I worked with Ted Hope, he's like, "Oh, let me read the Teamsters agreement." And I'm just like, "Oh, God, are you fucking kidding me?" Like, so he has that kind of, like, there's no detail too small for him, right? Um, I would say that, the way Killer tries to function is we try to adjust to each movie and kind of recognizing that each film is its own sort of organic creature with different needs and, different personality and so we try to sort of, instead of making the movie adjust to, like, well, this is how you do it. Like, I remember a million years ago, um, on Poison, and I can't remember exactly what the situation was, but there was something. I was the one who had the most, um, uh, experience of, me, Todd, and other people working on the film who had the most experience on so-called real film sets. And there was something Todd wanted to do, and I sort of said kind of cavalierly, "You don't do it that way," right? And he was like, "Well, why? Why not?" And it's really something that stuck with me because I think that's sort of been in a little bit of our mantra. I mean, there's plenty of things that you do on film sets that are done because that's the way you do it, often for safety
Mm.
reasons or what have you. But there's also everyone gets set in their ways, um, and we really try to never say to a filmmaker, "Well, that's just not done."
Hmm. Did you do it Todd's way on Poison in that example?
I can't remember. I can't remember what it was. See, we are blissfully getting to the age now where we won't even know if we're repeating stories
You
because
don't need to know all the details
the
anymore.
person who you're repeating them to doesn't remember either.
And
So,
how would you say you see risk at Killer? Because from the outside, I love some of the risks that I think you take. Um, but if you take too many risks all the time, the company collapses.
right.
So how do you balance that?
You know, it's we really have a lot of conversations about should we take this on? What kind of time commitment is it? You know, uh, what does it mean? We play devil's advocate to each other a lot. Uh, you know, Pam can be tougher than me of like, yeah, it sounds great, but no one's gonna make it. You know, uh, I talk a lot about like really needing to see the path, like, what's the path to makeability on something, you know? Um, and if we can't see it, then, sometimes we reluctantly are just like, it's just we just don't we wish you well,
Mm.
but it's just not something that we can use our time on right now.
Are you also at the same time you're looking at the path to makeability? Are you also thinking of the path to the audience? And is this
Well,
going to
they're
sell?
kind
Is
of
it going
one
to
in
sell
this
tickets or
they're sort of the same
yeah?
thing, except these days it's just so hard to know what's going to sell, and that's what has the whole industry, you know in the whole indie film
Mm,
sector, I suppose,
mm,
in a state of semi panic.
no. Yeah, let's talk about that panic. Is anything now better than when you started? Is are things more complicated? Is it still pushing a boulder up a hill every time for you?
I think it's the French proverb, the more it changes the more it stays the same. I mean, Ted, back to Ted again, Ted Hope and I think James Seamus, did they do it together? Or maybe it was just Ted, I can't remember, but, like, in 1999, he was part of an essay that I think IndieWire published.
I was working at IndieWire then, Christine.
Well, there you go.
There
That
you
was
have it.
basically like, indie film is dead,
Yeah.
and here we are, 26 years later, and so it dies all the time, and I guess the thing that gives me some sense of hope, because it's hard to have a ton of hope right now. It just feels like, I mean, that said, we just had a movie that passed $35 million this weekend.
Woo.
So, that feels pretty damn good. But I think what does still happen is movies that suddenly hit a nerve that you couldn't have predicted. There's all these movies that get reverse engineered and they work or they don't work, and then something just comes out of nowhere and suddenly it's the one everybody wants to see.
Mm. Well, Materialists is that this year, so great.
I
Mhm.
mean, look, I think if you parse its success, it's great script. She's a terrific director. Um, there are three, superheroes in it.
Yeah.
Um, But, is it also that audiences wanted to see something that was, an adult driven,
I was going to say it's adult.
I mean, I know, like, my partner's been away a lot because she's finishing a show, um, that's actually gonna be in San Sebastian, but not
I'm
when not
counting
during
down
the
the days.
yeah.
Yeah.
But, so sometimes I'll be like, "Oh, I'll go see a movie myself this weekend," because I love seeing movies by myself. And it really is like, there isn't anything if you don't wanna see a superhero film.
Yeah. Or a sequel or a, yeah.
Exactly, which are usually the one and the same.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say it's a superhero sequel or prequel
Exactly.
this summer. So, um, do you have a favorite part of the process? Are you someone who loves the genesis, the development? Do you love packaging and financing? Do you love the shoot? Do you love the post? What's
I
do
don't
you
like any of that.
Okay.
No, what I like 2 things. I like that moment when you actually get it greenlit.
Yeah.
I just like the sort of the high of that, the like, "Ugh, we pushed it over the line.
Mm,
Somehow, some way, this thing is gonna happen," right? and I like the other side of showing it to an audience. I mean, some of my most extraordinary experiences and memories are, showing, for example, I remember bringing Go Fish to uh, I guess that did London have a gay and lesbian film festival? They must
Yeah,
have.
now it's called BFI Flair, but I think it used to be the London Lesbian and Gay Film Festival or something.
Claire. Okay. So anyway, um, um, I remember taking it there, and it was the first time that it was being shown. It had already shown at Sundance, and I think it had already shown at Berlin. And it went to the London Gay and Lesbian Film Festival, and it was the first time it was shown to a largely female audience.
Okay.
And um, when the movie finished, there was, the last credit rolled, and there was this moment of absolute silence, and then the place exploded.
Mm.
And it was the explosion of a group of people who never saw themselves on screen.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
Mm.
So, those experiences are fantastic. I can name, like, I have about 10 of those,
Yeah.
you know, those experiences are great. But film production, and I think I've said this before, it's a little bit like childbirth. It's like you have to forget about it or no one would ever do it, you know? Not that I've experienced childbirth, I have not. But, the first day of almost every shoot, I'm a little like, "Oh, right, I forgot. I
Oh,
hate this."
yeah.
This
I
is
hate this part and
awful.
that part and that part, but then
Exactly.
when the baby comes, it can be better.
Right.
If people love the baby. Yeah.
Exactly.
I want to talk to you a little bit. We've mentioned obviously people like Todd Haynes, Todd Solondz, and they all got their start with you pretty much. But you've kept working with new talents, which I think is really impressive. Celine Song was very well known in the theater world, and you and Pam helped her make Past Lives, which, as I said,
Right.
is I don't want to say minor masterpiece. It's just a masterpiece to me. And then people like Janicza with
Right.
Zola, or Sammy Birch, a new screenwriter
Yep.
for May December. What keeps you going to want to work with new talent still today?
I mean, honestly, a big part of it is for my own emotional well-being because it's, it's such a it this is such a cynical business, and, it can get really difficult. I would say, like, people are rewarded for bad behavior all the time. Um, you see good movies die on the vine. You see bad movies getting celebrated. You see, people not taking risks. And when you're making a first-time filmmaker's movie, you're usually making the story they've waited their whole lives to tell, and you just can't be cynical in the face of that,
Hmm.
you know?
And I've been lucky to speak to Celine a few times about specifically past lives. I haven't talked to her about Materialists yet. I
Mhm.
will. And she was just saying that she felt so supported by you and Pam, like, every day on that set. And is does that feel like a different job than when you're on a Todd Haynes set now, that he doesn't need maybe I don't know if help is the right word, or sort of guidance or advice or logistical advice? I know Celine felt with you.
I mean, they every director needs support. It just depends what kind of support they need, you know? Um, every director needs to feel like someone's got their back.
Mm,
Todd, at this point, he doesn't he understands how he's telling his story. Um, but, there's still all kinds of landmines all over the place, on Past Lives, Celine needed a little more support at the beginning in terms of, like, "Okay, this is what these people do, this is what those people do, this is how, just, like directors, this sounds like a silly thing, but like in America, I'm not sure, I can't remember, even though I've made movies everywhere else, I can't remember if it's different in other places, but directors aren't supposed to talk to the background, to the extras. Because then the extras are being directed and they're only, it's supposed
Is that
to.
a union thing?
Mhm.
Okay.
So that's a hard one, to tell. That's one of those, like, if you said, what are the pitfalls of first-time directors? That's one. Another one, a first-time director often will treat every shot as if it's the same, you know, same importance, Um, whereas a more experienced director like Todd knows, like, this shot is just to get them out the door. This shot is just to get them down the street. This shot is just to make sure you see the notebook, So let's do that in 2 seconds. Um, so those are things that, like, we, typically would work with a first time director on. But mostly, it's just like, I'm here, I know the story you're trying to tell, and I'm gonna help support it any way I can.
Hmm. And I'm going to look up that quote. You're Hollywood's greatest anomaly, according to Vanity Fair, finally. Do you even feel part of Hollywood? Is my first question about that. You very much have
Ooh.
stayed in New York, but are you Hollywood?
I mean, I feel like that distinction, especially these days, like, when we first started making movies, we, put them together, as I said, with, equity. There was a system then called a limited partnership. I'm not sure that still exists. Um, equity, sometimes we started working with foreign sales companies around SAFE, I suppose. And then eventually those movies would sell either to, an independent distributor, of which, like, there weren't that many, or to the subsidiary of a Hollywood studio,
The
like 20th
Searchlight,
Classics or
the
Searchlight or
classics.
Miramax or what have you. So then as time went on and movies started to, like, become more hybrid, like, they were financed out of foreign sales, but pre-bought by a North American studio or what have you. It just started to feel like, what makes something indie and what doesn't, what makes something Hollywood and what doesn't. We've made studio movies,
Hmm.
and I mean, you can't really say with any credibility that A24 isn't a studio.
Hmm.
I mean, what are they if they're not a studio, right?
Yeah.
Are they a Hollywood studio? Well, um, they have offices in Los Angeles. So I guess I just don't make that distinction
Not
anymore.
hung up on the label.
Oh, I mean, there's this group that you have probably heard about called Producers United.
Yes.
And, it's a great organization, and one of the things it's done is it has brought producers together, really at the beginning in the interest of, fighting for producers' rights,
Hmm.
for lack of a better term, in terms of credits, but also, um, you know, uh, uh, pay, pay, health insurance, all those things. But one of the other things it's done is create a community where, you really do have on the same, like, giant WhatsApp, you know, uh, uh, conglomeration, producers of all different stripes and sizes.
Hmm. I also, as mentioned, I interview women producers on
Mhm.
this series so far, just because why not? Um, and I've heard you talk a little bit about some of the misogyny you've seen, you and Pam. I've heard you talk on stage about being called girls and things like
Mhm.
that. And that happened to me like 2 years ago. Somebody called me a girl in a meeting in San Sebastian, and I'm clearly past the girl age. Um, has that changed over the years, or is it hard to tell because now you're sort of Christine Vachon legend, Oscar nominee, 30 years of doing this. So maybe people don't call you girl because of that. But do you still see any misogyny in the
Yeah, I mean, it's it's always a hard question to answer because I it's almost like that, do you what's it like to be a female producer? And I'm like, I don't know what it's like not to be one.
yeah.
Um, uh, so yeah, you definitely still feel sometimes a boys' club,
Hmm.
you know.
The
Um,
sausage party we've both attended in the past,
exactly,
Christine. Yeah.
exactly. I won't name names, but
No.
I was not invited back. Let's just leave it at that. Um, and when I point that kind of thing out, right, you immediately can tell there's like this, oh, okay. Like when I pointed that out at the, festival I was at where that was obvious, um, somebody who would surprise you said to me, like, why do you have to take the fun out of everything? Like, we're all just having a good time. And, why do you have to, like, be that person? And it's like,
Can't
bec-
more of us have fun?
yeah,
My
like, you
retort,
know,
can't women have fun in this room too?
exactly. And can't there be more than one of us?
Yeah.
So
And also, you're also an icon of queer cinema. Do you think the landscape has changed for queer voices, and especially given, oh, I don't want to go into American politics right now, but does it feel robust for queer voices right now? What can
I
we do to
think
keep protecting those?
I think we're at a real inflection point right now in terms of all kinds of, DEI
Mm,
representation. And the good thing, I think, is that there are there are companies and individuals coming in to sort of fill the gaps. I mean, one of the most empowering things for me as a young producer was realizing that if you made a movie uh, that that you wanted to appeal directly to the gay and lesbian audience or queer audience, um, that you could, if you made it for the right amount of money, you could market it directly to them, didn't have to break out, and it would make its money back.
mm,
And I think that, what we've learned over the years is that, uh, you know, audiences will show up for something,
mm.
if they think that it's about them. They
Yeah.
really will.
And if there's an authenticity
That's
behind
right.
it. Yeah.
That's right.
Um, what is coming up at Killer? You don't have to reveal secrets. This is not an NDA type moment, or you're not talking to a trade. But yeah, I mentioned the Kent Jones film that's coming up. Yeah, what's on your slate that you can tell us?
Well, Kent Jones, film with Willem Dafoe and Greta Lee, um, will be coming to a festival near you either this fall or this winter. We're kind of figuring it out. Um, we're really happy with the movie. Uh, we are hoping, knock wood, that we will be doing Todd Haynes's film, sometime at the top of the year.
Okay, we look forward to all of that. I always ask two questions at the end of this podcast.
Sure.
One is, what is your pet peeve on a set? Who drives you crazy? What behavior drives you crazy when you're shooting?
Um, I know Pam would say the fact that everyone's looking at their phones all the time. Um, uh, people who aren't quiet, usual AD things, just like I I like there to be an atmosphere that feels conducive to a director doing their best work
Yeah,
and, things like that. Uh, but nothing really drives me that crazy
okay,
anymore.
that's good. And here's the big question that we could talk about for like 4 hours. What do you think people misunderstand about what a producer really does? And think this isn't just, Joe Blow on the street. I think even within the film and TV world,
Sure.
sometimes people don't really understand what producers do. So yeah, what do you think people don't get?
I think people don't understand that, producing is an extraordinarily creative business, but also there's that this idea that the creative and the financial are separate in show business, the film business, is is insane because, the great directors I work with understand the budget and the budget's limitations very well. And it allows them to do their best work because they can figure out this is a creative solution that is less costly than this one, which will allow me to get another day of shooting or, you know, uh, a more expensive set or what have you. So, you know, what I love about producing is the collision of art and commerce.
Mm.
To me, that's what makes it endlessly fascinating. This idea that we're just like, figuring out ways to get these great stories told, risky stories told, but in a way that makes sense financially, so that it makes you feel almost like you got away with something, but you didn't. You just did something in a smart way.
Yeah, you're smart with it. Love it. Christine Vachon, thank you so much for joining me today for this chat. I won't say we. I mean, my cat is in the room, but that's about it.
I sorry I
And
got a cat sight.
please keep fighting the good fight for great films. And we look forward to seeing what's coming up next at Killer Films. Congrats on 30
Awesome.
years.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in a few weeks.